Let Sleeping Drakes Lie is the 18th episode of the 6th season of Cheers. This is directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And I was really looking forward to rewatching this episode. It's one of the episodes I remember so vividly from the first time I watched Cheers, and even though I could remember it really vividly, still really thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely one of the most unique and chaotic episodes of Cheers. It starts off with Cliff saying that the female species are drawn to men in uniform, and Carla throws some insults at him, and Cliff, I admired Cliff. I do admire what he said. He said to Carla, "You're not going to insult me any longer because I'm not going to give you the chance. As from right now, I am shutting up, zipping my lip." And everybody clapped, which was brilliant. I do admire Cliff for standing up to Carla, but clearly that was never going to work. And what I really liked about this scene, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but Carla was smiling quite a bit. Absolutely partly because she enjoys making fun of Cliff, but I'd also like to think that actually it's because they have this strange friendship and it's something she enjoys. Kind of every time they throw insults at each other, it's kind of in a way where they're so friendly with each other, by which I mean they spend a lot of time with each other, that they can insult each other. It's kind of like when you're friends with somebody for so long, you could insult each other and that's actually how you bond. And I'd like to think that that's a little bit of what's going on here. Really strong intro. And then Frasier tells a story about a patient and people are only interested in listening to him when he starts to talk about sex. And apparently this individual was very much attracted to men, male dancers, particularly if they were wearing tights. And part of me thinks, especially with how the episode plays out, part of me thinks that actually it was a fake story. Because A, I'd like to think Frasier wouldn't talk about his patients even if he doesn't use names. And B, I feel like he maybe started to create this story about a sex-obsessed patient just to get people to listen to his story. That's what I'd like to think, and we'll talk more about that as the narrative progresses. Norm then comes in, we get a Norm, Rebecca then comes out, and I don't know why I found this so funny, but she said, "Would you believe the board of directors is asking for a breakdown of projected earnings for the next 6 months?" It's not a funny sentence, but I just think that her coming out of there with something so serious after a lot of kind of light-hearted conversation was just very entertaining. And then Woody responding, "Yes," I just quite liked. We learned that Norm is actually painting Evan Drake's house because Rebecca recommended him, and he decides to wind her up by saying, "That's a cute photo of you he has next to his nightstand." And he suggests that Rebecca actually comes round to the house while he's painting it. Evan Drake is actually away in Europe. Rebecca says no, it wouldn't be appropriate, and then she'll meet him there in an hour, and we'll come to that in a moment. A woman then comes into the bar looking for Frasier, and this is a woman we learn is called Jennifer, and Sam assumes it's the woman who was at the centre of Frasier's story from earlier on. And Sam decides to ask the woman out. She left a package in his office, and how that progresses is also very entertaining. Frasier decides to start stretching on the bar and pretending to be a former dancer, which I liked at that point, but it gets even better as it goes on. And again, we'll talk about that as we get there. We are then in Mr. Drake's bedroom, and Rebecca is rolling around on the bed, and she starts to panic that Mr. Drake is going to come back from Europe, and Norm is saying, "You don't come back unexpectedly from Europe, you come back from the grocery store or from the movie theatre." And then we hear a noise. And Norm panics, and he says, "It's Mr. Drake, he's back unexpectedly from Europe." Norm, just the panic in his voice I absolutely loved. And Rebecca decides to hide in the closet because Mr. Drake is coming up the stairs. Also, I apologise if I keep going back and forth between Evan Drake and Mr. Drake. I never just call him Evan. I don't know why, but I always have to go with one or the other. And it annoys me that I can't be consistent, so I apologise about that. Rebecca goes into the closet. Norm obviously tries to find a way to get Mr. Drake out of his bedroom, but he's so exhausted from his trip, he just wants to sleep. And he actually tells Norm to scoot, which I didn't like. And I don't really, in general, have any strong opinions about Mr. Drake, but telling Norm to scoot, I don't like that. We're then back at Cheers, and everybody is saying, so you just left her in the closet? And they tell Norm he has to go back and save her, because Rebecca, as far as we know, is still in Mr. Drake's closet. And it just so happens as well that the door has a squeaky door, so it would be very difficult for her to get out of there without waking up Evan Drake, whom we learn is a light sleeper. And while Norm leaves to go and get her, Jennifer comes to pick up Sam, and Sam jumps over the bar, and he's wearing leg warmers, and it's brilliant. It's a really fun moment. Norm then runs into Mr. Drake's room. He tells him there's a crack in the ceiling. He has to get out. It's going to come tumbling down. And then he says, okay, well, I'll fasten my paint cans in the closet. So he goes to do that. And the closet is so big. It is huge. And he gives Rebecca a packet of crisps or chips, which seems like a bad idea. Give her marshmallows or something that's going to be soft to eat, not noisy food. And clearly, this was a failed attempt. What is he going to do? Well, it gets very unpredictable, but we'll come back to that. Frasier then suggests to Norm, back at Cheers, that he comes up with some outlandish story because Mr. Drake is more likely to believe it, because why would Norm say something so ridiculous if it wasn't true? And he's going to do that, but first Sam then comes in to talk to Frasier, and Frasier points out he treated 2 people this morning. Sam doesn't pick up on that at first. And then he finds out that the other person Frasier treated, he was treating her for pyromania. And then we hear the sirens, and off Sam runs. What I love about this, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but when Frasier said pyromania, there are a couple of seconds when Sam is trying to comprehend this. And Sam of the Diane days, which I realised were not that long ago, wouldn't have really known what that word meant. It would have been an opportunity for Diane to make fun of the fact he didn't know what it meant, to explain it to him in a really dumb way. And that's not what happened here. By hearing the sirens, it confirms that actually Sam does know what that word means. And I just thought that was really interesting. Again, maybe I am reading too much into it, but I feel like those few seconds, had this been an earlier season, would have been Sam trying to work out what it meant. And then usually Diane swooping in to tell him that he's inferior, or making him feel inferior for not knowing what it means. I love Diane. That makes her sound really harsh. She's a very complex character. But I just thought that was interesting with Sam. And then we spend pretty much the rest of the episode in Mr. Drake's bedroom. And of course the mystery here is, what kind of outlandish story is Norm going to create? He comes rampaging into Mr. Drake's bedroom, and at this point Rebecca is on the floor under the bed. She was about to make it out, and maybe she would have done if Norm hadn't come in. Who knows? But Norm comes rampaging in, and he says that there are killer bees coming this way from Mexico. Fair enough, very outlandish. And he ultimately ends up saying he's been behaving this way because he grew up without a lot of money. And I kept thinking, where is this going? I could remember this episode very well, but I still feel like we have that element of, what is the point in this conversation? And he explains that he wants to do something symbolic in his life. And that means carrying a rich man across the lawn in his pajamas. Hats off to the writers. This is a very creative, unpredictable episode. And he ends up doing this. And unfortunately, while Norm was out carrying a rich man across the lawn in his pajamas, the butler came in and made the bed. And we established that Rebecca didn't leave because she gives Norm a little wave from under the bed, which is adorable. And then the next thing we know, kind of creepy, Norm is climbing in the bedroom through the window, and he doesn't even give Mr. Drake a chance to respond to this. He just says, I told the guys at the bar about this experience. They want to see it for themselves. So before Mr. Drake has a chance to even respond to this, Norm picks him up. He's going out again to carry him across the lawn. And that's what we see. From in the distance, Norm carrying Mr. Drake away from the house, while we see the guys helping Rebecca down the ladder from the bedroom window. And That's how we end things, and it's absolutely bonkers. And I would have loved to have seen their reactions when they were doing, well, the table read for the first time, or when they first read this, because it is crazy and it's fun. And Norm was fantastic, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It would have been great if we got to see some table reads. I wish they filmed table reads for DVD extras. I just wish there were more Cheers bloopers and behind the scenes things out there. Wishful thinking. But either way, fantastic episode. Let Sleeping Drakes Lie is so fun, so funny, really creative, pretty perfect. I can't fault it. It's an absolutely fantastic episode of Cheers.